What's different about your approach than other people's approach to building a business?
I kind of came up with a criteria, if I build a business, it must be able to get to $5 million a year. I must own 97% plus of it. I must love the customer, love the product. I must be able to build it in 3 months or less. It must feel like play, and so on. And one thing I started to think about myself is, what if I could engineer businesses that every year I was having an exit, instead of the exit coming at the end of 7 years? I'd come to learn, whether it was from some of my experiences of family members or friends, that equity is kind of a lottery ticket. A lot of people own equity. The amount of times that actually comes to fruition, I know you hear the stories, but there's a lot of dead bodies too along the way. And so, how I see it is like, I'm done with lottery tickets. And what if I could just be abundant, really engineer this thing right out the gate to just build a beautiful cash flowing company?
And so how did you build companies that you could technically exit in a year?
Just to clarify, I'm saying that you can exit every year and make a meaningful amount.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So like, essentially what you're saying is like, have a focus and all those principles that you just listed, but how did you actually go about and do that? Because it makes sense on the surface, but even what you said, that one of the points that you drive home to your founders inside of Founder OS is build a cash flowing, profitable business. And logically, that shouldn't be something that you have to hammer home to business owners, right? Build a cash flowing business that you enjoy.
A lot of people have like good economics on their product, but they have no eyeballs, no traffic. And so the next question is like, okay, can you grow your business organically? Do you need to rely on paid ads, right? And over my career, I've built audiences 14 million plus around my businesses, 3 million plus around my personal brand, all on organic content, not spending a dime on ads. And so if you can go and build up that level of organic eyeballs, you don't need to rely on some ad agency, then, playing the Facebook game all the time. And not to say you can't do that, right? You can do that too, but at least you've got a bunch of these folks coming to you, knocking on your door, persuaded from your organic content, high trust, coming on calls, being curious, not skeptical, and ready to work with you, and thereby being able to build a much higher margin business.
What do you see your role as a founder at the revenue goals, the revenue targets? Like if a solopreneur's sub 1 million, then you're moving into 1 to 3, you're starting to build a team, 3 to 5, 3 to 10, you're really starting to become a leader. At each of those levels and beyond, is the new role of a founder just to be like a content marketer?
We can break down a few stages, and then I can answer the question directly. It's like, when you're starting out, like you got to be a bit of that chief everything officer, right? You're creating the content, you're likely posting it, you're just trying to get the thing off the ground, right? Going from $0 to maybe like 30K profit per month. Stage 2 then from that is like you're making some profit, right? You're either a writing first creator where you're more comfortable on platforms like X, LinkedIn with a newsletter, or you're more video first creator where you're doing YouTube, maybe Instagram, and pushing people to a newsletter that way. So your first hire, depending on what route you go, is probably going to be either a video editor if you're going the video first route, or a social writer if you're going the writing first route. And then the next hire is probably a social manager to help you with all this posting, right? So you're beginning to set up like stage 1 at that point of like a media company, and moving from a creator, which I see as a bit of a trap, right? Because you end up on a content hamster wheel if you're not careful there. And keep in mind, creators, they typically run businesses that are just chasing views to go and drive money from ads, which is not what founders are generally looking to do, where they're looking to build businesses that drive to traffic to a business, right? So in there, you've got your systems being set up, your team being set up, the content starting to be distributed by your team. You have people actually kind of helping you package this content, even create a lot of it, so that you can be more the talent behind the camera, or the person kind of ideating the stuff, but have people kind of carrying out the vision. And then as you continue to scale, getting beyond like 100K at this point, you're now kind of really becoming the CEO of a personal media company. And the goal there is to make sure that you have like the right people in the right seats. I think we live in an exciting time now with tools like Claude Code and OpenClaw. You can really start making things incredibly efficiently. The main goal there is to make sure that you're leveraging a content waterfall system, which essentially you want to go and think about, what is my pillar piece of content, right? And so the content waterfall system is a powerful system that we've created at Founder OS that essentially allows people to take one pillar piece of content and turn it into 24 other pieces of content. And so let's just say we have a long form YouTube video. We're able to take that YouTube video and essentially go and cut that up into, say, 6 Instagram reels that are optimized based on the best moments from that video, 6 YouTube shorts, 6 TikTok videos, as well as like say 6 X videos as well, right? From there, you can take some of the core pillars you went through and turn those into 3 or 4 newsletters as well that you release over the next couple months. In addition, the actual YouTube video will also be uploaded to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts. And then you can also turn some of those best moments into things like, long form LinkedIn posts, could also become a Substack article. And so you're getting a lot of legs out of that creative energy you put into something. Because I think what founders don't realize, right, is as you're building a business, you get what you tolerate. And one thing I've had to learn is like, this idea of kind of adopting an ambitious hourly rate. So my hourly rate is $15,000 an hour. And anything below that, I'm going to be really careful about just taking that on. And so the Content Waterfall system allows you to then, you're filming maybe for a couple days, but then know that you're filling up that content calendar, filling up your trust online and the distribution, right? Without it requiring more and more and more of you. So that's kind of like an example of a system that you're really mastering at that stage. As you move into like $1 million plus a month, this is where you probably have key channel owners for each area. So I think there's some innovative ways you can start doing this too. One thing that we do, Yan, who's a designer on my team, actually runs our Instagram. So we have this like aesthetic professional who's making sure that everything's clean, it's beautiful, from the stories to the reels to the carousels, all of it, both designing it and making sure the feed and everything looks dialed. Another example is on our video side, right? Like we've got specialists in all the different areas. We have an editor over here, Memo, who's running the whole second channel for us, right? So the way I see it is that as you start to push beyond $1 million a month, I think the one key word that every founder needs to be thinking about right in this moment is you need to raise an army of intrapreneurs in your company, right? It's no longer okay if someone's just got a job in your company, right? With how fast things are moving, I also wouldn't feel safe as someone working in a company if I was just doing a job, because you're going to get replaced in the next year. And so it's really about having this team of entrepreneurs that underneath your business are building a business within it and owning a business unit, owning a revenue, a cost line, and a profit number every year. And that's what you start to raise and kind of cultivate, I think, at that $1 million plus a month level. It kind of happens all the way through, but it becomes that much more poignant at that level when, you've got more overhead, you've maybe got a few more people on your team, and you're raising this team of absolute weapons to then make a dent and try to get to 20, 30 million a year, potentially, depending on how you're looking to build a business.
Lots there. Thank you. So I want to ask about, before I get into the entrepreneurs, I want to ask about $15,000 an hour hourly rate. So you just said that you don't do anything if you're not going to be able to charge $15,000 an hour or make $15,000 an hour. How did you decide on that number? And is that something that you're actively working through as you're making decisions every single day?
Yeah, so people have asked me, what's the best book you've ever read, right? And I think it's one of the hard questions. But if I was to name one, I think it's The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, right? And in that book, Naval talks about this idea of setting an ambitious hourly rate for yourself. And I remember after reading that book, maybe it was like 7 years ago, I decided on the rate of $5,000 an hour, right? And what it instantly caused me to do is to think about, what are the tasks that I have on my plate, right? And do a bit of a time audit, right? So first things first, going and auditing, what are all the things that I've currently been working through on my to-do list in my Apple Notes over the last, say, month or two? Add those all to a Google Sheet in column 1, right? Which is just tasks. Similarly, go and look at my calendar, look at all the shit that's been on there, all the different meetings and stuff, and add that to the list as well. Then when you've kind of got it all populated, for me, that ends up being like maybe 120, 180 things. Then going to the next columns, which are automate, eliminate, delegate, right? And starting to mark down, okay, what stuff on the list can I automate, eliminate, delegate, and also doing a bit of an energy score for each one, right? Does it drain your energy? Is it neutral, or does it give you energy, right? And starting to get a bit of a picture of what's on your plate now and trying to see if you can basically delegate, an enormous amount of it. Most importantly, eliminate the shit that you don't even need to be doing. And then again, in this day and age with Claude Code, OpenClaw, so many AI tools that can take this shit off your plate, seeing just what you can automate and remove. This idea of just trying to get yourself to less, but better. And so in terms of how I got to that $5,000 ambitious rate, well, I think it's just, honestly, you kind of lick your finger to the wind a bit initially, right? And just go, okay, roughly like what is my offer right now as an example, right? Maybe you're selling something that's worth $5,000. Cool. What's the profit on that? Okay, maybe it's 70%. So it's roughly, say, you make $2,000 profit back a napkin. Okay, if you're closing for that, how much money would you make, right? Oh, okay, well, I would close at, say, a 50% close rate. Okay, so if you were just closing on that offer that the profit is $2,000 every time you close it, you would make $1,000. Again, simplifying this, keeping it simple. Okay, so let's just make it ambitious though. So instead of 1,000, let's make it 5,000. It just makes it more visceral, right? And more of a razor to be more discerning in terms of if something doesn't sound like 5,000, no, right? And this exercise isn't perfect. You're not always going to be, right on the mark, right? You're still going to cave, and I still cave and do a thing that's I'm not supposed to be doing, right? But the point is that it starts to kind of upgrade. And as I was saying, you get what you tolerate as a founder, right? And if you start tolerating a level where, this is what my time is worth, right? Your energy, your leadership level, the way and things you spend your time on gradually kind of rise to that as well.
That's right. People raise to the level of the standard that you set as a leader, as a founder.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've seen, and give me your opinion on this, as founders rise through the ranks, how difficult is it for them to release the things that they need to eliminate or delegate?
Yeah. So everyone's on their own rhythm. I can tell you what works for me. So yeah, I do these kind of time audits every quarter. So every single quarter, sitting down and doing that exercise I just described, right? Looking at the tasks I have on my list, my calendar, automate, eliminate, delegate, who on my team should do that? Do I need to hire anyone? And then moving along, right? The other thing I do is every single month I do what's called a personal board meeting, okay? Which essentially my belief has been that, public companies have board meetings where they need to report to investors to stay accountable. You need a board meeting, even as like a just cash flowing, profitable entrepreneur with no investors, right? So I've been building businesses the last decade basically just by myself, right? No co-founders. And so the big thing is like it allows me to basically go and lay out what are the personal goals for the next 30 days? What are the business goals for the next 30 days? What does my org chart look like? What does it need to look like? I have things like my 10-year, 3-year, 1-year vision in there, and then what I need to do over the next 90 days and that month to achieve it. And then I have, basically as well, at the end of it, I'll have an hour reflection time at the end of each month to think about, what did I learn? What went well and what didn't go well. And it's a concept I've learned from Ray Dalio, who talks about like pain plus reflection equals progress. And so it gives me a chance just to even list just 3-4 things in each category. I just completed this for February. The things that went well, I was proud of like where the business got to, proud of the tenacity on the team, the entrepreneurs we're raising. What didn't go well, I think, something sugar gets me sometimes, so a little bit of sugar here and there. It's like, gotta be careful, man, gotta be careful. And then what did I learn? Some good books and learning a lot of the Claude Code and OpenClaw stuff. So it allows you just to step back and then know like, what's the 80-20 then of the next month that you got to do. And in those board meetings too, I'll spot things that, maybe are really draining my energy. Like, oh my God, I'm getting sucked into too many meetings, right? So it allows you to kind of move from an engine mindset where you're just the force behind everything and feeling like if you don't do it, it won't get done, to moving your mindset and your identity to being more of an architect where you're designing these systems, you're almost designing like a fantasy roster in terms of your team. And you're really kind of focused on, looking down at the machine and making sure it's working right, the right people in the right roles, and everything's interconnected all the way from how people are hearing about you across social media to how you're capturing those folks in email lists or text messages to how you're converting them on sales calls and delivering an amazing product, and then all the way through to how you're maybe renewing or upselling or expanding that revenue.
You mentioned entrepreneurs. What is your approach on finding and hiring and retaining the top talent?
First things first is like referrals, right? Like similar fish swim together, right? So A players hang with other A players. There's that saying, B players hire C players, et cetera, right? So first things first is hitting up my network. I have people in different areas that like I'll just text with the role and say, hey, we're hiring, and they do it same thing if they're looking for anyone. And essentially I'm just pinging my network to see if any of them know anyone else, right? The next thing is like, obviously across my personal brand that's now around say 3 million, right? I can put these out there and gradually bubble up people from my audience. And from there, we essentially approach hiring A players almost like a hiring funnel, right? People go, they arrive on a page that tells them what we're all about. It's got a video there. It shows the open roles. They can put in their information. They then also film a Loom video on what they've done exceptional over the last 5 years. And so I'm able to see these Loom videos from folks and see, like, is what they're saying exceptional actually exceptional? This is a question I'd learned from a recent podcast I'd watched from Elon Musk and Patrick Collison. And so, yeah, we're really trying to understand, like, what have these people done, right? Great people in their spare time are building shit, right? They're shipping shit. They've got weird hobbies. They're curious as fuck. And they have high agency. And so that's what we're looking for, are like high agency people with extreme ownership that have tenacity, hunger, and all the while like are great communicators, and not just verbally, but like really good at written communication, which I think is really important because we have a remote team. Everyone's all over the world, and we want people that are like really dialed and organized.
Are you testing, or what kind of tests are you giving them? Or test projects, writing?
Test projects. We do an IQ test as well to make sure that, that's solid. And then depending on the role, we may even have follow-up projects, and even put them on a 30 or 60-day test to just like make sure, essentially, it's really dialed in. I think we want that hiring process to be solid. We want it to be swift, so that the right people see, like right at the get-go, how organized and swift our processes are. We also want people to prove themselves, and we want the burden of proof to be on the hire to show like why you. And then from there, we want the onboarding to be so intense that it kind of sets the tone right out the gate. So I like to think of like the first 30 days as a bit of like drinking from a fire hose, and really making sure that everyone understands our systems. They understand how the whole business functions. Before we even hire them, there's a clear 30, 60, 90 as to what success looks like. And they're graded at 30, 60, 90. And so we're essentially just keeping a tight eye on things, ensuring that the pace is fast. One of our big things is that like we are shipping regularly. I think inside of FounderOS, if you're not shipping every day, you're probably doing something wrong. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that that velocity is keeping up. Most companies, as they grow, kind of grow and then revert to the mean and get kind of mediocre. We want to make sure if we're adding anyone, things are ripping, or we'll just automate the role. There's no sense hiring.
Are you measuring the velocity of your team?
Not on like a velocity, is just like cash flow.
Okay. All right. So you're looking at cash flow as a metric, and then you're comparing it against your hires, or
year over year cash flow growth in that month. So it if seasonality or different things are all factored in, and you can see, okay, how was this January versus last January, February over February on a profit basis. And just trying to see, okay, well, if we're working on the right stuff, we've got the right people in, the right seats. As a company, we should be growing that main metric, which is like, to me, the North Star metric of a business that I'm building. And I think that's also what I encourage a lot of founders to be thinking about, right? Is like building a high margin, cash flowing, profitable, beautiful business that you control 97% of or more, and that you're able to make the moves. I always had this belief, when I was younger, BitMaker days, you're looking at TechCrunch, you're looking at Zuck, you're looking at Spiegel, oh my Lord, I got to raise some money and I got to have these big exits. And that was kind of very glorified. I think times are changing now.
I've heard from, creators, founders that have million followers or what, and they're not really making any money off of that. And I'm curious to know what your experience is in how to most effectively monetize your audience so that it supports the business long term. And it's not even just like a cash grab too.
Yeah, I think Paddy Galloway has made this framework pretty famous, right? This idea of core, casual, and new viewers, right? And typically, if you want a video to really hit the jackpot on YouTube and generate not just views, but an amazing core audience, you're trying to hit all of those at once. And I think what happens too often is all these platforms are causing founders to kind of become addicted to numbers that don't matter. Engagement, likes, comments, this shit means nothing, right? What you care about is profit per piece of content, right? Or cash flows, right? That you're generating from this organic content. So how do you go and drive profit per content, right? Well, the number one thing there is really looking at, first off, who is your core customer, right? And then going and really looking at the data and ideally surveying these people, right? And understanding what are their main goals, what are their biggest challenges, what's keeping them up at night, and if they were to get your help with anything, what would they most want your help with, right? Because again, similar fish swim together. And so if you can attract more people like your highest paying customers, you win and your profit per content goes up. And so from there, it's then taking those survey results, and whether it's using your own noggin or going and using ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, to kind of start brainstorming ideas, you can take those survey results and start to come up with really solid ideas, and then mix that with some outlier research using a platform like oneof10.com to go and look at, different outliers that have likely happened over the last 3 months, have gotten over 100,000 views on channels maybe in and around your size. And so now we're using a little bit of the YouTube algo game, plus like the research that we've gotten from these customers, and then kind of mashing those two things to then create banger content on YouTube that, again, is driving profit per piece of content. And so in my company, and what we set up with founders and help them install is essentially every piece of content below it, you'll see on my YouTube that essentially we typically have a video that goes, and below it has a core free resource or system that we give them. And we also give them a link if they want to join Founder OS, okay? And so those links are all uniquely identifiable links. So we can track folks from when they go and download that thing all the way through to when they purchase. And we can then go and look at our content, say over 90 days, and look at what was the 30-day cash collected from it, the 90-day cash collected from it, because we have that data infrastructure set up behind it. Without the infrastructure, you're literally flying blind on these platforms. And I think the difference between a creator and a founder is creators are just creating content, again, just to kind of get it out there, typically chasing views and typically making money off of ads. Again, there's exceptions to the rule. Founders, though, have a business on the back of this, right? And thereby you're using those views, those eyeballs, to drive some core thing. So not all views are the same. For creators, all views are the same, right? They make their CPM from YouTube and that's their vibe, right? Whereas founders need to make sure they're driving the right eyeballs to the right thing, or else they die, right? And so that's the approach that I would take with it. And I think that you can have your cake and eat it too, meaning I think that you can go, and I know you can go because I've done it and I've helped others with it. It's like you can go and you can have content that goes and drives you cash flow while also like it performing well, but it typically will not perform as well as if you just went for viral content. And just to explain the science of that really quick is, say I'm going and I'm targeting business owners that are doing over $3 million a year. Well, just by nature, that's like 0.5% of the population. So if I'm making a video that's really true to that audience and their struggles, fears, dreams, pain points, whatever, it's naturally like just not going to have as big of a pool of people. So I can kind of still add a little bit of juice to it and kind of broaden that out across core, casual, new. But I don't want to water it down so much that someone like me and you wouldn't even click on it, right? So that video, if it gets 100,000 views, that is amazing for that specific market, right? If I wanted to go get 10 million views right now, I would just go make a beginner video around a given subject that has a really wide total addressable market, but I know those views are going to be literally worth nothing.
Yeah, and you actually can track that and see that.
Yeah, and we see it all the time because sometimes we'll make a video that is meant to be maybe more of a growth video for our channel on YouTube as an example, that just to drive more eyeballs of entrepreneurs generally. An example is it's the second most popular video on our channel called Success is Hard Until You Build Systems Like This. But when we look at the back end, that video over 30 days, I think made less than $1,000. Whereas there's videos on our page like copy this system, it'll blow up your business, that was specific for business owners doing over $1 million a year. 40,000 views, made over $50,000 in 30 days. So the scale there's drastic.
And so you mentioned that you have built a media company inside of Founders OS, right? What is a media company inside of another company?
I kind of see it like Founder OS, in a sense, is a media company. I think we're like a content first company. And I think a media company at the end of the day is when a company realizes that they really need to control their messaging, they need to control their distribution, and they need to control their audience versus just relying on a platform. And so it really starts with going and dialing in like, well, what is that messaging all about? I think one place that founders as well as brands should be thinking about is like, what is your point of view, right? What is it? What is your vision, right? What's your mission? What do you believe like it needs to happen over the next decade? And what are like the core enemies of the brand? And then what is your perspective on just like the world we exist in and why your brand exists and people should pay attention, right? And I think a lot of times people water that down. They don't make it spiky enough. and it kind of just feels like meh, right? I know my point of view is that, entrepreneurs for years have been worshiping this kind of church of hustle, and that more than ever, founders are kind of rebelling against that, realizing that it's a crock of shit, and that you should be able to control your destiny. And that really, when we look at like why we even started building businesses in the first place, it was for freedom, right? Freedom to control, where you work, when you work, what you work on, and who you work with. And it's that control, that optionality, and that enjoyment and play that we really got into it for. And we've kind of been sold this lie over the last decade or so, that it's just about grinding and hustling and that everything will just be okay. But it hasn't been okay, right? And founders are more burnt out than ever. Mental health is like collapsing among so many founders, and like something's got to give. And so to me, in my own journey, I've been through that struggle and really learned that it's like systems, first and foremost, that are the key to kind of getting out of that rhythm, right? Systems so that you can set up different pieces of your company to run without you. You don't need to be the bottleneck in all this stuff. People have decision rights and can make decisions without needing you. Things are documented step by step, more plug and play. And you're able to walk away from your business for 30 days and eventually come back to it after you've been in nature or whatever you like to do. And it's stronger than when you left. And I think that's the future that founders deserve to live in. But it takes a new approach to building companies, not the same old way that I think has not been working for a bit. So when it comes then to personal media company, I think first and foremost, then it's having a core message you're looking to put out there, a few pillars that you want to be staples of your brand. Mine may be personal branding and helping people with content systems, and then just personal stories of my own experience. And then I'm just getting those messages out there, and those become almost like the drumbeat of my content strategy. And then in terms of the topics, like I said, it's a bit kind of feeding those content pillars, but informing it for the most part based on the actual voice of my paying customers. So whether it's surveying them, whether it's using transcripts from Fathom calls that you've recorded, and then taking literal sentences that they've said, and then using that for your content so you're speaking their language. It's kind of approaching this whole thing as like one part art, meaning infusing it with your taste, the beauty, the vibe that you want to be kind of conveying and that energy you want to have. And then 50% like the science behind creating content that converts, content that is memorable, content that people want to share with others, whether it's in WhatsApp, text, or Slack.
How do they make content that doesn't just feel like another ad or a corporate ad or a corporate training video?
First things first is like stories, right? And I'm not talking that founders need to, or personal brand folks need to start going and building personal brands that just divulge everything, right? You can still have a private life and have a personal brand. And so I think it's a matter of kind of doing some story mining. I'm writing a book right now. I had gotten through the first, 50,000 words of this thing. And what I realized is like, even me, like I've been doing this for some time. I've published 36,000 pieces of content online, but I was really struggling with a lot of the narrative, like infusing it with different stories, maybe a little bit of humor, stories from my childhood, stories of the folks in Founder OS that we've helped. The narrative and telling stories, like I get it, like it can be tricky, but I think it's one of those things that even if it doesn't come easy to you, it's worth mining for them, And so how do you mine for them, right? Well, it's looking at just some of those, like, first off, like base level stories that you should just have in your own life, right? The origin stories of how you started a business, why you started it, your values, and a story around each one of your values, right? What are some of the biggest challenges you've been through? Any stories from your childhood that are memorable that have taught you different lessons you've taken later in your life? Any things that you wish you knew 5 years ago, and how did you learn those things, right? So starting to kind of mine for these, and every single month making an effort to both mine for stories, but also just pay attention to just the things that are going on in your regular life that have some sort of, relevance now. It could be something as insignificant as you were in a traffic jam and looking at yourself getting super frustrated with something, and then that having some tie into how you think mindfulness is important, even in the smallest moments, right? So it doesn't need to be always these like profound, crazy stories. Just even the most human experiences, I think, convey like powerful messages and just make you relatable. And I think in these, day and age where, again, people follow people, then they follow brands, it's more important than ever, in this kind of trust recession we're in right now, where most Americans don't even trust their neighbor, that, you're building a brand, you're putting your story out there, you're putting your face out there, and just showing up as best you can. I'll say too, like in these journeys, whether people are kind of experienced or maybe for people that are starting more, it's totally natural to feel embarrassed, feel scared, feel, really not that confident that you're even going to do well and probably just make a fool of yourself. That's natural when you're doing anything new, right? And it's being okay with starting messy, just shipping, a post a day for 90 days, not even really worrying about the quality of it, just developing the muscle of shipping content and putting yourself out there. Inevitably, you're going to get some comments. You're going to get people saying some things, and it's going to feel really awkward and weird at first. That's how it felt for me, for sure, and most people I speak with. But it's a really worthy journey. The same way, learning how to build tech is hard, or launching a product is hard, or walking up to that person you're attracted to and saying hello is hard. But these things are all worth it.
Can you describe what a founder that's stuck looks like and feels like?
I think a founder that's stuck feels like they're alone. Typically kind of really in their head, heart's kind of shut down, feels like maybe the walls are caving in a bit, kind of constantly just distracted, whether it's Slack messages, emails late at night, first thing in the morning, checking social media, and it, feeling kind of in a constant state of like mini emergencies. One minute it's not sure where your next lead's going to come from. Next minute it's a sponsorship that's closed down. Next minute it's someone quitting, and you constantly feel like you're going it alone. And there's a kind of an overall feeling of darkness, and a general feeling like you're starting to lose hope a little bit, and definitely questioning, like, is this really all actually worth it? And so, yeah, I think like in general, one word would be just like lonely, because also along the way, the founder I just described could be someone that's making $500K a month, right? So from the outside, everything looks amazing. Maybe half their friends are envious in some, small way. People would definitely not guess that this person's actually silently struggling, and all the while, like, they're really not doing well. And so I think it's like also sometimes that dichotomy of, the combination of from the outside, everything looks amazing, and inside you're slowly dying, that makes it all that much more difficult. And not to mention, there's like the pressure just keeps building. You may have people that rely on you, and there may be moments when things get really, really tough, that when you look at the room of people around you that you've hired and maybe have an overhead of 150 or 200K a month, that they don't even understand the real crisis at hand, right? Whatever that crisis may be. Maybe it's that the market's shifting. Maybe that it's, agents are taking over. Maybe it's that a social platform shifted or something got shut down, right? And you feel like, oh shit, you've got to burden that and you've got to buckle up. And so, I think it's that loneliness is like the main thing that it feels like.
How do founders even recognize that they're lonely, or recognize that they're burned out, or recognize that they're addicted to chaos?
One of my breaking points, like 8 years ago, I'd kind of been through a burnout cycle, gotten good, went through another one, and had a bit of like a mental breakdown in a hotel room here in LA, and called up my dad, was crying, didn't know what was going on. My brain just like felt like it was on fire. It'd been like days and days, honestly, a year even or so of stress at that point, and was really hitting like an absolute wall. Like it just felt like my brain was again on fire. And so my dad ended up booking an appointment for me. It's one of the nicest things that anyone's ever done, probably the nicest. And it was with a Dr. Amen. I'm a doctor here, and he specializes in brain health. And I went and had an MRI done, and it showed that I had like frontal lobe damage from 4 or 5 concussions playing hockey when I was younger. I hadn't really paid much attention to it. I knew I had gotten hit pretty hard. I didn't know the real repercussion of it. And I had also been using a bunch of substances too, which weren't helping the matter as well. And so I proceeded to then kind of take some treatments and go through some stuff. And it didn't seem to be working really. I had kind of sobered up more, and I was, being more healthy and all that, but something still felt kind of screwed up. And not like physically, it was more like mental health vibes. And I was talking to a doctor, say, every few weeks. And on this third appointment, I was like, listen, man, like I'm really struggling here. Really struggling with purpose, struggling with vision. Like I really don't know what to do. And I'm done with this. Like I just can't do it anymore. And he's like, Matt, I'm gonna say one thing to you, okay? One thing you should do. I was like, all right, fucking hit me. He's like, get a coach. And I was like, get a coach. Like, what the heck? Like prior, he had been giving me vitamins to go get and GABA and vitamin D and have magnesium before bed. So I'm thinking like, what's the supplement? What do we got here? What do you got for this, And he's like, a coach. And so like most things, when I get advice, like I took it really seriously. And I was like, okay, this guy's a wise man. I'm going to get a coach. And so I started kind of trialing 3 different coaches. Figured I'd go for a month, give them all a little shot, do a couple sessions with each, and just see which one had good chemistry, a good fit, and like felt like they had that mix of like, there was a good soul connection and they kind of like understood who I was on a real level. And then also like they were looking to grow and, they understood like my desire to like build something impactful. And I ended up settling on someone named Ryan Begelman, who's still someone I work with today. It's been about 8 years. And Ryan's also become like one of my best friends. And Ryan is someone that really helped me sober up 7 years ago. He's really inspired me in a way to just like keep on being just like a better man. In a sense, he's like almost like an older brother that I never had. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. I got 4 younger siblings, but now I got like a bit more of an older brother in him. And just like a good peer that you can like bounce ideas off of, joke around with, and also like stress test plans. And so my way really of working with him is like to, every time we have a meeting, I send him a bit of a memo before the meeting, just in terms of like my current thinking about life and business. He reads it before it, kind of collects his thinking. So he's coming in prepared. And then we have a good 90-minute deep dive. And that goes down around every 2-3 weeks. And so that's been just like a good rhythm to things. And so could then answer your question of like how do you handle this and all that? I think sometimes like people don't have that like rhythm with someone, that actually is invested like in their success, and they're probably even paying like something to, so that they really are like locked in. You can have a friend or you can have a parent or a peer, but if it's sometimes I find like, and what I learned up to that point is like, I thought I could just do it with like informal things. And that had worked to a point. But I think at some point you need that more rigorous attention, someone taking it more serious, someone that's willing to read memos every 2-3 weeks and not think you're crazy and kind of just do it because that's kind of the job. And someone that, even regardless of being paid or anything, just like genuinely is invested in your success, which is what I found with Ryan. So yeah, that was a really transformative moment in my career and life, and kind of a big inflection point for my health too.
I also think that you started lifting weights, working out, like created a routine and habits for yourself, right? What are your thoughts on morning routine, habits, fitness, reading, these things that everyone tells us are success habits?
Yeah, I was with a founder in Venice just over the weekend, and we were chopping it up and talking about this sort of subject. And whenever I'm in these conversations, I feel like, at least the founders I resonate with, but I think it's most founders, one of the most pleasurable things in general is just flow, right? I think when I think about like a well-lived life, I think the most important thing to me is like peace. But it's also like enjoyment, right? And enjoyment is just being in flow, right? Like doing things where you're just losing track of time. And so my day, like the most important pillar of my day is like 4 hours of founder flow, right? Having 4 hours of uninterrupted time where I can work on the things that only I can do. Those like 4 hours are sacred. And in those 4 hours, I get more done than most people would get done in like 4 weeks, right? Time flies by and I'm just locked in. I don't have the same routine all the time. I travel a lot. I've lived in 45 countries, probably the last 12 years. I actually live out of 2 suitcases. I have a home base in Bali, but I travel all over. And so, I live in Dubai, live in Bali a little bit, I'm in LA right now, go to Miami, going to go to Australia. So I'm all over the place. Basically, like I find as I'm traveling around, I just have different routines or energies, and then the time zones like will make you adjust in different ways, right? In Bali, you may have meetings from 6 to 9 a couple of days a week, whereas in LA, you have a different time zone, right? But these days, how I've been approaching things, I wake up at 4 a.m. right now, and then 4 a.m., get a coffee, and then just lock in and do my 4 hours of founder flow, right thing in the morning, because no one's going to bug me then. It's just peaceful. And there's going to be no notifications, no calls, no messages. And I always find that first thing in the morning is the best time because you're fresh, you're rested, and I think you're, the chemicals in your body that make effort feel good, and your motivation is just like the highest rate then. So that's the first thing I do, and I just let myself get lost in creative tasks. These days, it's things like, different exceptional content we're putting out there, maybe hiring someone new. It's a lot of work on AI, as I think that things are getting completely transformed right now. So just really hacking away, and then just improving different and tinkering on things, basically. So that's that. And then after I get a little bit of ADD and can't focus anymore because my brain's a little bit fried, I go for typically a workout, go to Gold's here, and then we'll get a smoothie, and then typically have a couple team meetings and all that, and then probably take another afternoon long break, either nature, beach, walk around, get some sunlight, and that's kind of the day. So it typically starts really early, ends really early, and I give myself just a lot of space to think, to go for walks, to see friends, to socialize. I think, these days I've been noticing, especially here in LA, just meeting up with really good people, and just the amount of like learning you can do just from osmosis and just getting out there, right? Not losing sight of the importance of like connection, right, and community, and just just being human.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing you say is you basically work a block, and then you might do some work or what might look like work, but you're out, you're connecting with people, you're outside. And so one of your big things that you've created in life are systems, but in business, right? You've created systems. What are the systems, or what do you do differently? Let me ask that. What do you do differently with your systems that allows you to create a life that you've designed in this way?
Yeah, I think there's a few core principles. Like one is like, I think it's a lifestyle, it's a way of being, and it's also like a cultural value, right? So systems are obviously the backbone of Founder OS. OS stands for operating systems, and the culture is built around that we're systems first, and we're a writing first culture, right? So if something you complete is done well and it's going to be done again, you systemize it, right? You write it down, you make sure also if it's like an AI powered system, it's uploaded to the given AI we're using. It's documented. You maybe even have a video recording of you doing it. And we have hundreds of these at this point. And it's because we're just constantly churning them out. And it's not about how many we do, or that, it doesn't need to be reminded of people, right? It's just literally a way of operating. Every department head is running their department inside of the company with these principles. And every individual knows that if they're joining this company, this is the way, right? And so that's a big part of it, right? So if you have all these systems owners in your company that are all owning their part and systemizing their part rigorously, well, you end up with this ability to take more of a step back over time because number one, as you bring on new people, they can be onboarded easily because everything's documented. Number two, because people are taking ownership over their given area and running it like a business unit, they can be really autonomous and independent, right? You don't need to be looking over their shoulder all the time, right? And, overall too, like if you had to replace people or if there was a fire somewhere, like it's all documented, right? You're not just guessing at what's going on, right? If someone were to quit, it's like you have all the documentation, right? So it just leads to a lot more calm in a business by nature. I think the next thing is it's always been important to me to live like this, right? I've always been someone that like designs my life very intentionally, right? I think I'd picked this up from Tim Ferriss when I was like 13 and was like, okay, that's how I'm going to live. And I already kind of had that in my blood and just started kind of letting it unfold. And so, as such, it's like, in my businesses, I've stress tested them over time, going and taking a vacation for a week unplugged, seeing how it does, seeing what breaks. And using those breakages, not as bad things or good things, just opportunities to go and fix a couple areas and dial it in. Then taking a vacation for 2 weeks unplugged, recently taking one for a month in Japan, right? And always every time, both knowing that I can come back to something that's stronger because of these systems, and then also the paying attention to, certain areas may cave a bit, or maybe the velocity at which you wish the company was moving at, it's not quite there even without you. So you're like, okay, what can I do there? Who can I empower? Who can I incentivize? How can I tweak things to get it right? And it's kind of this constant puzzle, that you're trying to solve. And I think that's a general shift I've had over the last 5 years is like really moving from problem-oriented thinking, where it's like, oh my God, this problem, or oh my God, this issue over there, and really just whining and being a bitch, right? And complaining about how things are. It's like, no, you signed up for this, right? You signed up for this responsibility. This is the job, right? Step up and view it as a puzzle, not a problem. And I think when you start to view it all as a puzzle, it kind of complements kind of viewing your business as a machine, right? And then just, tweaking it like you would a motorcycle or a car until it's kind of tooled up the way you like it. And so examples of this are like tooling up a chief of staff to be your first line of defense, right? Someone that is going to block your calendar and make sure it's free. Someone's going to ensure things don't get to you if they don't need to. Someone that really is incentivized off of getting you back 20 hours per week and making sure, first and foremost, you're getting a good sleep at night and that your health is good, right? Having someone literally in your company, their main metric is your health, right? So that's by design. That doesn't happen by accident.
Does your chief of staff have like health metrics for you?
Yeah, just keep it simple, right? Like just like good sleep. Like we don't need all the metrics. That to me is like peace equals good sleep at night. Yeah. And if I can just nail that, we're not booking meetings really late. We're being careful of stress loads. Like we're trying to keep things like chill, like manageable, versus overdoing it and grinding. So that's an example of like by design, right? Another example of like building a company by design would be like how you even block your weeks, right? You can batch things, obviously, right? So I batch all my meetings on a Tuesday, and for the most part, have the rest of the week free for more flow activities, and then just things I want to do, right? Another example too is even when we're filming content to build my personal brand, we have YouTube that has about 250,000 people over there. We're making 2 videos per week, which is quite a lot of content compared to most people out there. And oftentimes people ask like, how the hell are you doing this? Especially at the level that we do it at, the cinematography and the editing and the value and the free systems and the whole bit. And the thing there is that we book these like filming weeks, right? Where we'll film 12, 13 videos in 1 week and batch that thing so that we go hardcore that week and then are able to take a break and take a couple months off, if not more. And so again, it's like, that's by design. That didn't happen by accident, right? So it's starting to realize that like you have the power to make these kinds of tweaks. And these are the systems that we unlock for folks that we work with in FounderOS. And the big thing is like, they're just a series of kind of easy systems across like the business side of things, all the way from sales to onboarding to your content delivery, audience growth, but also more importantly too, like how to manage your time as a founder, how to manage the team around you, how to structure them, the different workflows they need to have. And making sure you even know how to bring on great people onto your team and actually recruit these people. Really making sure that that's dialed in, especially in this day and age where, algorithms are changing, the world's changing faster than ever. It's complicated, not easy to find good people, let alone like have those people stay for any time that's meaningful. What I've always found is that having people on board your company for 3+ years is when the real magic happens, and you kind of got this band that can read each other's minds. And so, it's helping founders with that.
How do you know, because you talked about coming back and if the velocity of the company is not where you want it, how do you know whether it's a people or a process issue?
Yeah, I think, you have some conversations and you are in the room and you're seeing what's going on, right? You understand it. Like, I love this quote by Jensen Huang, right? He's like, they're asking like, he doesn't run any one-to-ones, and he runs meetings where there's like 54 people on one meeting with him. And people are like, why do you do this, right? He's like, I just built the machine that works for me, right? And it's this idea like he's built this car and he just loves driving it. And it's his car, right? And so I find like when I come back to my business after doing like a trip in Japan, it's like I'm back in the car, right? And you can kind of like smell what's going on a little bit, you're like, someone smoked weed in my car, or like, even though there's a freshener in there, or like whatever, or like something feels off, right? And sure enough, like you dig a little bit and you discover like, why did this thing not get shipped, right? Hypothetically, right? This isn't real, but like, why did this thing not get shipped? Well, was it this person wasn't reliable, or was it that the process was broken in some way, that for some reason they were never able to move to the next step because the process was screwed up? For me, when I analyze, say, like a velocity thing, I think it generally would have to do more with like, are you raising real leaders in the company, right? It's a leadership thing. And it inevitably comes down to you as the leader, right? Like, how have you screwed up, or what you need to take responsibility for what's gone wrong and look yourself in the mirror as to why, when you look at your company, why wasn't that velocity quite there? And even if it was a leadership issue in the company, how are you participating in that leadership issue? And I think there, then it leads you to look at things like, are you spending quality time with folks to really align on the vision and making sure that you're all seeing things the same and as bought in, as all in as you can each be? Are you looking at incentives and making sure that that's dialed in the right way, so that people feel like as the bigger they go, the bigger they swing, the more they're rewarded? Even implementing, there can be some systems like things like, implementing self-assessments and more like performance review type stuff just to make sure that there's like these more regular check-ins versus just letting things kind of go status quo. So those are some things I look at. Oftentimes it's a combination.
And now with the advent of AI, especially OpenClaw, CloudBot, how much time should founders be spending on transitioning things over to these new AI tools?
Yeah, so I think right now is like one of the most exciting times ever to be a founder. I also think it's a time that you can't ignore what's going on, right? I think most businesses will die in the next year. I think that the space is getting massively disrupted all over, right? And especially in online businesses, like the tectonic plates are like shifting here. I think that on the exciting side, we're all going to be surrounded by these agents that we can work with that are specialized in different areas that work 24/7 and that are recursive at some point, and just like even teaching one another and helping get things done without much of your feedback. I think it's a day and age where more than ever, entrepreneurship is going to require leadership. And by leadership, what I mean is you're going to have all of these agents, right? And you'll have some team members too. And just like when you bring on a new employee or a team member, like you got to lead these people, right? You got to point a vision to them. You got to explain how they should analyze things. You have to tell them what great looks like and what bad looks like. And you have to make sure that they're doing the right things in the right timing and collaborating correctly. I think it's going to be no different in this world. It'll actually just happen more rapidly. And so your need to almost be this rapid fire leader that can really handle all that, right, is going to be key. And that's why, as exciting as it would be, I think a lot of people will get left behind because they see it as more of this toy or this like pet project, which is fine, versus something that like really requires like a level of like architecture and systems thinking to it. And so I think that, across, your awareness, you're going to have more content that's being generated by these things. I think that you're going to, on the customer success side of your company, have more ability to customize the experience and wow your audience. And so when you think about on the inquiry side of things, right, someone's entered in their email, that used to just lead to like a thank you page. Now that's going to lead to maybe some customized experience where it's already analyzed your LinkedIn and your Instagram, is giving you some customized social media report, as an example. And then, all the way through to sales, right? Which I think that all the rote tasks in sales will start getting super automated. And I think that basically the future belongs to just entrepreneurs, and everyone is an entrepreneur. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with this kind of like, idea that I think every entrepreneur right now needs to view their company as multiple business units and ensure that their team views themselves as entrepreneurs that own a revenue line item and a profit line item, because now everyone's going to also be empowered with these agents around them. And I think on the team level, like it's setting people up to own those business units so they really earn their seat in your company, right? I think recently it's here February, like companies have been doing mass layoffs left, right, and center. And you can kind of see where things are going. And I think in a good way, like we can go and give folks that are working with us like the opportunity to build these amazing companies within our companies. And it can be an abundant era versus something that's like scarcity and replacing people type thing. Why not arm these people to think bigger in their area, be more productive and swing bigger? And so that's roughly how I'm seeing it. But I think that most people will kind of get disrupted by all of this. I think the thing that I'm noticing is it's just taking a newer level of thinking, a newer level of speed. You almost need to just make AI updates sometimes, like just like a full-time job. It feels like that's the rate at which it's moving at. So how I'm thinking about it too is, right now, like dedicating a couple weeks, even every month, just to kind of hack away at it and start to improve processes, starting to automate different aspects, and just like, again, just play with it. Inspired by Pete, the founder of OpenClaw, like when he was asked on a recent Lex Friedman podcast, like, why you of the 10,000 other projects? He's like, honestly, I was just playing and I just viewed this as art. And it's that kind of approach of just playing with it within the realms of your businesses or projects you're working on, and just getting obsessed in some way with it, finding that intersection of what excites you about it, what you're great at, and what's going to make a meaningful impact on your bottom line. And I think if every business can just look at that and even pick just a small area, maybe it's just improving sales calls, or maybe it's just improving your onboarding experience.
Do you recommend that founders actually go get a Mac Mini and go build for a little bit?
I can just speak what I'm doing. And yes, I got one and I'm going for it. I think I was convinced recently, 6 weeks ago by a friend, Igor, and he sat down with me. We were getting breakfast here, and he's like, Matt, like, it's the moment. I'm like, come on, like, really? I'm pretty skeptical just overall. I'm not looking to just like use tools to use tools. I don't have much time. I want to be careful. I like to be able to do my thing. I don't want to just like infringe on my freedom by tinkering on shit.
Yeah, we've been, just to interject a little bit, because I think we're around the same age, like kind of came up with the internet, and then this technology era came around, but it was just a lot of boxes of software that plugged in and didn't really do much, to be honest. And you needed people to work. And so there wasn't a lot of efficiencies gained or these big sweeping changes. And now, we're at this moment where it's, oh no, like literally you can almost do anything.
Yeah. So Igor's going to me and being like, this is the agentic moment. And I was like, all right. And I was convinced. And so, got it going and just tinkering, playing, and it's slowly kind of like taking over different functions in our companies. And I think it is just going to lead to a lot more delight in all the ways. I think it's just one of these magical things that I'm at least looking at Founder OS and just like, how do I make the founder experience truly magical and have these like little delightful Easter egg moments? You may have expected one thing, but you got a whole website built for you or whatever, right? Where it's just, custom tools being shipped constantly, looking and seeing around corners and predicting what founders need before they even need it and before maybe we even sometimes see it. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not missing out on this wave. I grew up 10 years old building computers, like taught myself how to code, was building products as a kid, and then, got into corporate and, did that and got away from it. So next week I'm going to lock myself in my room basically, and I'm going to go build it. The
generational lock-in, that's what I'm talking
about. Yeah, it is. It's going to be a generational lock-in for sure. Like, and I'm just going to go create, and having this newfound look on like being an artist, being a creator, and just shipping things. I'm really excited about just putting things out there and seeing how it lands. I agree with you on the play and the art and the creation. People shouldn't be afraid of it. They should just go try it and they should just go create. So many people are so used to wanting to be perfect around things. But this is an opportunity to just go put stuff out there because yes, someone else might be building the same thing as you for their company, but that doesn't matter because like you said, if you have your own audience, if you have your own people, your own market that is coming to you or that you have access to, they don't care about what anyone else is building. They care about what you're building, right? And so I'm going to go build products for my audience. I'm going to go build products for myself. Second brain is like the thing that is really lighting me up right now, and just having things running in the background to make sure that I'm sticking to the vision and prioritizing my tasks and all that. So I'm really excited about that, but that's going to be my next week. So
nice, fun.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So you've basically built your dream life. You built the systems, you built the companies. What's something that you're still just figuring out?
Yeah, I think one thing there's a lot of things I'm still figuring out. Figuring out all the things we just talked about, trying to figure out all this agent stuff, figuring out, different relationships in my life. I'm figuring out a big theme this year is like a home base. So I've made a home base in a couple different spots this year, and spending, 4 or so months in Bali and 4 or so months in the Dolomites in Europe, and just kind of like settling down and focusing on community. There's a lot of amazing things about traveling. And one thing that can be tricky is like community, right? And I find community and connection where I am, but being able to go deeper with it and just having that rhythm instead of, being like, oh yeah, I got a jet, I'm heading on to the next thing. So slowing down after this next little 2-month stint. And just really finding, peace from going deeper in just one or two places versus peace from being in all of the places. So that's kind of like a more of a theme of this year, I think. And then just continue just to try and like figure things out and just be a better man, better, it's interesting, right? I feel like that's kind of the tricky part as any human, right? Like we sometimes forget all these identities we have, right? And sometimes those identities, like we'd give ourselves really good scores in some and then shitty scores in others, right? Like I'm a CEO, founder, brother, uncle, son, CEO, whatever, all these things, artist. And some of them, you'd score yourself like, oh yeah, I'm really taking care of that identity of myself, right? But then there's another identity maybe that you're kind of not as much, right? And so, I think probably more than anything, it's like continue to reinforce, like with myself even, like you are enough, you're doing a good job, you're moving things forward, and like, the universe is working for you kind of thing. So it's kind of that overall, like bringing them together and just being like a whole well-rounded human is the thing that I'm still figuring out, probably like the rest of us.
All right, Matt, where can people find you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for all this. It's been a really good conversation. People can find me, Matt Gray, on all social platforms. They can check out Founder OS if they're interested in growing their profitable personal brand at founderos.com and Founder OS on all platforms. Just want to thank you for your time. Thanks so much for flying in, man. You're a legend. You really did it, man. You just go for it. Sometimes that's the most underrated thing, right? If people shouldn't be afraid, sometimes it's like, get on the damn plane. Yep. I came here to get on a plane. You came here and we kind of made it happen. So appreciate it. And thanks so much.
I think really insightful conversation. I think you landed a lot of things for anybody listening, whether they're starting out or I think even founders that you're really trying to speak to. So I just really appreciate you taking the time and being here. So, and as always, everybody, I appreciate you. I love you. This has been For Your Own Good. Peace.